brought to you by IOCO, Africa's leading integrated technology services company.
Meanwhile, Telkom boss Serame Taukobong has continued to defend the company's lower rate of capital expenditure for mobile and fibre. The fixed line operator has positioned itself as an infrastructure company, providing capability to its own operations and services, the wider industry with connectivity, particularly through fibre. Business Day's business writer Mudiwa Gavaza joins us now to unpack a Telkom shift to modernizing its network with updated fibre technology. Thank you so much for your time, Mudiwa. Let's actually start off with Telkom's spending patterns in the fibre space. What does that actually look like?
So right now they're spending around 5 billion a year. That's the number that we got from Serame Taukobong, and he was just talking about the fact that we had engaged him on the fact that there seems to be a view that Telkom might be lagging behind in terms of capital expenditure spend. And he said, actually, if you look at it, what our competitors are doing is they are basically spending to get to where we are. You know, because he says that because Telkom had spent so much money on fibre in the past, they now get to spend a little bit less than their competitors and then focus on rather being efficient with their fibre as opposed to, you know, just putting it down, because fibre is at the core of almost everything that they are doing. So even on the mobile side, a lot of that connectivity is being done, you know, through the fibre, which is why Telkom Mobile is paying OpenServe, you know, for example. Yeah.
Do you think maybe then, because it's quite clear that they front-loaded on the spending where now they don't have to spend as much as they've spent in the past, do you think that maybe this has distorted the view from investors that maybe Telkom doesn't have a lot of cash on hand? I mean, one metric that we look at, for example, here is a free cash flow, that maybe that could start easing in the future.
I think that's definitely a possibility, right? Because there's a couple of things that are happening right now.
Yeah.
So you and I have spoken about how, if you look at the Vodacom, you know, Remgro deal, a lot of that, you know, around fibre has to do with the move towards people co-investing, trying to bring their resources together, all of that. And when you even gauge Telkom on that matter, they actually don't even see a need for all that. If they can get...
They've done it on their own.
Yes, they've already done it on their own. If they can get a partner, they're like, it's great, but they're not actively looking, you know, on that end. So that's one way to look at it. But there has definitely been that view, because imagine if you're in a market where Vodacom and MTN are spending an average of 10 billion rand, you know, every year, just in South Africa. I mean, with Vodacom, it's 11 billion. That's the number that we got from Shamil a couple of weeks ago, you know, in terms of their CapEx spend. But, you know, if Serame is to be believed, a lot of what MTN and Vodacom are doing is to build what's called backhaul. So backhaul is basically the connectivity within the network. Right? You know, that's connecting base stations to the core network, all of that stuff. And it's like, as Telkom, we've already done a lot of that. These other guys are actually expanding their networks and building fibre to join, to keep their networks running, expanding, etc. So that's, you know, that's one view. And I guess it's one of those things that's a little bit misunderstood about Telkom.
But now, does that mean maybe that on Telkom's side, there has been a trade-off between spend on fibre and mobile? And maybe kind of speaking to the fact that they are only the third biggest mobile operator in the country?
Well, once again, this is one of those relative things. And at least for now, this is the one part where you'd say that the strategy seems to be working, because they are the number 3 operator, but they are the fastest growing operator in South Africa, because once upon a time it was Cell C in their position.
I remember.
Yeah, and we've actually reached the stage now at roughly 21 million subscribers, where Telkom is at a place that Cell C never reached, right? In terms of some of those subscriber numbers, right? That's one way. The other way, interestingly enough, in terms of Telkom strategy, is they kind of use their mobile side and their fiber side together.
Okay.
Right. So, for example, one of the ways they do expansion of their network is they have a roaming agreement with Vodacom, for example. Right. So, in areas where Telkom Mobile doesn't have its own network,
Yes.
its own towers, they are using Vodacom infrastructure.
Right.
If they start seeing that there's a growth in a particular area, then they will use it as an indicator to say, okay, fine, we need to build our own, infrastructure here. In the same way for fiber, there's homes passed. That's one of the ways in which people, tend to decide connectivity in the fiber space. Once again, they are the routers that have the SIM cards in them, right? That's called fixed wireless.
Yes.
If they see a number of people getting fixed wireless in a particular area, then that gives them insight to say, hey, we need to actually put fiber down, because fiber is still the most reliable and fastest way to connect to the internet. So the more they see that activity, they'll actually go and build. Whereas there's been almost an arms race where people have just been building fiber. So for them, it's rather, let's see, are people using internet, and is it to the capacity that maybe it necessitates us coming in and actually putting fiber down, so that we're not spraying and praying. Because right now that's almost the approach.
Okay.
You throw the fiber and then
see
you hold, and you
few
see
catches, yeah.
exactly.
Looking at all of this and the fact that fiber is the future, does it then come out that Telkom may be in a sweeter spot in the competitive landscape than people had thought?
They definitely do. I mean, that 170,000 Ks of fiber that they have, that is very hard to replicate.
Yeah.
And when we see, as much as we talk about what's happening with MTN and Vodacom on the mobile side, just on the fiber side, I know that in the last set of results, I was looking at Remgro's results, and we don't really have an indication from their latest set of results on how much they spent on fiber in the last period. However, we do have some indications. So, for example, the fact that part of the Vodacom massive deal is Vodacom putting in 13 billion. That's meant to be for infrastructure rollout on the side of Vumatel, dark fiber, and all of that. That's one piece. Another piece that we have as an indication is last year, Standard Bank gave a huge loan facility to Mazda for 25 billion rand, just for that expansion. So those numbers show you already just how much is going to be spent. And if Telkom is spending less, but still being able to compete, then maybe there's more to their story than we thought.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and for your analysis on that, Mudiwa. Really, really appreciate it. That was Mudiwa Gavaza, business writer for Business Day.
Brought to you by IOCO, Africa's leading integrated technology services company.